Hey guys, welcome to Why Go Friends English. Today we are going to talk about learning vocabulary.
Right. Every language teacher is going to have their own special way to teach you guys how to learn vocabulary. And a lot of them do focus on time, but they don't necessarily focus on comprehension. And so they push a lot of words and they have their own strategies. We've heard people try to say, memorize 20 words a day, or take these 10 words and memorize them over the course of the week, or memorize 1,000 words in a week by using roots or something like that. And the list goes on and on and on. The fact is that a lot of times when we learn these words, we don't actually remember them. We've been trained by a long history to learn words for the short term and to not learn words to comprehend them and use them over the course of a long time. So we may gain a lot of words, but then if those words
pass our test.
Right, we may pass the test, but if we lose those words, then actually our knowledge of the language isn't actually very big. So today we're going to talk about 3 ways that it has not worked in the past and 5 things that you guys can do today to improve your vocabulary.
For sure. And if you guys remember, earlier this week, we released a video talking about how important grammar is. We do still believe that grammar is super important to learn, but vocabulary and paralanguage together with grammar are super, super important to learn. They're just as important. Josh talked about a 3-legged stool. It's the same idea. So you need to have all 3, and what's best is if you learn them all together. We'll get to that a little bit in the 5 things that you can do.
Right. So thing number 1 that just does not work in vocabulary learning is do not learn words that are in the same category. This makes learning the words short term pretty easy. We can identify them. They're all colors, or they're all verbs, or they're all proper nouns, or whatever. And it makes it easy for us to categorize them and make flashcards, but our brain gets confused when we have all the words that are the same. If I'm trying to memorize fruit and I say, okay, I got apple, I have orange, I have pineapple, my brain is going to get those confused when I try to actually go out there and use that. So instead of trying to memorize all the words in one category, we need to try to figure out a way that we can combine words to use them in different categories. So for example, instead of just remembering the texture of things, so instead of memorizing fluffy and hard and rough and spiky, I'm trying to memorize all of those adjectives. What would be better is if we use those adjectives with a proper noun that can go with it. So for example, instead of just we're trying to memorize all those textures, we can try to memorize fluffy cat. And that may seem super simple to some of you, but putting these 2 words together means that our brain can actually recall them a lot easier than if we're trying to remember, what are the words for this color that I memorized like 2 weeks ago? Is it beige or is it maroon? I don't remember what those words are, and your brain just kind of gives up. But instead of that, if you combine these 2 words and from different categories, then actually your brain kind of puts those 2 and links those 2 together. So now when you think of cat, you think of fluffy. When you think of fluffy, you think of cat. And so those 2 words, because they're linked together, they're a lot stronger than just being put beside the similar words of a similar category.
This is even more important because it helps you learn words that go together commonly in English. Okay, I've heard a lot of ESL speakers or a lot of English as a foreign language speakers, they put together words that don't go together. Maybe they take an adjective and they take a noun, just any old adjective and any old noun, and they put something together that just doesn't make sense, like slimy spaghetti. Is spaghetti slippery? Yes. Would we use slimy for food words? No, not at all. So, not unless it's a really bad thing, like really, really old spaghetti, I might call slimy spaghetti. yeah, we're not having spaghetti tomorrow, are we? So that's just something to keep in mind. And one of the areas of English that this really comes through and becomes really important to not do is to learn all phrasal verbs together. Like, a phrasal verb is when you take a normal verb and you take a preposition, you put them together to achieve a certain thing. It's used as a unit that you put in certain situations. So an example of a prepositional verb or phrasal verb here would be get on the bus, but we get into a car. Now, you can get in here and you can memorize the grammar rules for all the different things that we would use into versus on for. You can get in there and you can memorize that, but the problem is there are so many exceptions to those that you would also have to memorize all of those exceptions. Would it not be better to learn these in phrases or in sentences already that you would, one, already use, two, you would know exactly how to use them? So prepositions alone, I've already tried learning them in 2 other languages. They are very, very difficult to get a hold of, but learning them in this way is so much easier, and it saves me time, it saves me effort, and I can immediately go out and speak it. I could go from the classroom to actually using it appropriately, commonly. Nobody's questioning what I'm saying.
Right. And
effective.
It's a really, really difficult thing for a lot of learners to do it that way, because a lot of teachers, they are looking at a list of words, but that just doesn't work. So thing number 2 that just doesn't quite work for vocabulary, for gaining vocabulary, is that a lot of times students, they try to memorize the grammar formulas. The problem is that as much as those can be useful, they're very, very difficult to actually use on a daily basis. Because like Amber said, it's very difficult to take that thing and to take it out of the classroom and use it while you're talking to a person. I don't think I've ever, when I was talking to a person, said, it has to be subject, verb, indirect object, direct object. I don't, my mind doesn't work like that when we're
even in
a
China,
conversation.
when we were learning Mandarin, it didn't work like that. We learned the patterns by listening first, then getting out there to speak. We did not learn formal grammar in China.
Or take our children for an example. We have a 3-year-old and a 13-month-old, and they are not learning grammar formulas. They are not memorizing words like subject, verb, direct object, and indirect object. They are learning language first, then grammar. So the problem that a lot of language learners have is that they focus on the grammar to try to use these words. But like Amber just said, there are so many exceptions to these rules that we memorize that honestly kind of becomes ineffective.
That's true. So true. I mean, and honestly, if James came up to me and was talking about grammar rules and parts of speech, I would be really concerned. Honestly, I would really be concerned. I'd be like, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for you. Learn how to use your words first. Would it not be the same for you in an English-speaking environment to be able to communicate first, then be able to explain what you're doing and why it works?
Right.
I mean, I agree with that. So the third thing you should not do is you should not memorize the dictionary. You should not memorize tons and tons and tons of words. More vocabulary that you have memorized does not mean you're going to be more fluent in English. Okay, the more grammar rules you remember and the patterns of English that you remember does not mean that you are going to be more and more fluent. It just means you're going to be able to pass more standardized tests, to be honest. The average American speaker, native born, learning English, we have an active vocabulary of about 20,000 words, which sounds like a lot until you realize we probably only use about 10,000 on a normal day-to-day basis. Well, only 10,000. So, to be a fluent English speaker, generally speaking, you only have to know about 10,000 English words. However, you have to be able to use those in the appropriate situation, in the appropriate pattern, in the appropriate place. So, we need to learn acceptable English, acceptable word combinations, not proper. We don't need to learn Shakespeare to learn English.
Right. And because if we try to take the dictionary and go A to Z, a lot of that is, one, not going to be used, but two, it's just too much for us to know.
If you think about it, the English dictionary has about 170,000 words, but the average American only uses or knows of 20,000, and we only use about 10,000 in daily life.
Wow.
So don't memorize the dictionary. You're more likely to learn a lot of words you will never need to know, or words that you may use that we don't know what you're using it for or what it is. Even if it's in our dictionary, it doesn't mean we actually need it to be fluent.
Right. So we've talked about a few reasons why language learning and gaining vocabulary doesn't always work. But now we're going to talk about 5 things that you guys can do today to help you gain more vocabulary efficiently.
Sure.
So thing number 1 that we have done for a long time is we make flashcards, and that's just a piece of paper with a word on one side and a word on the other. There's programs online. We have resources that we use online too, but those things are only as good as the content that you can put into them. Yeah. That's why I personally like to make my own flashcards, not because programs on the internet, they use wrong words, just because I can gain those words a little bit easier if I do it myself. So one is to use flashcards, but I would highly recommend using a proper verb with the right noun, like we talked about earlier. So for example, you could say something like, James gives gifts. And that would be a really good way to memorize that. But if you just focus just on the grammar, like we talked about earlier, then you could also say bananas paint tacos. And that wouldn't make much sense. That shouldn't be on a flashcard.
Wouldn't make any sense.
Way number 1 to study vocabulary, make sure that you use proper flashcards with a good verb and a good noun that goes with it.
Yeah. The second one is to take those prepositions and your phrasal verbs and put them together properly within the context that they would be most often used. So to put on, you could say he was put on trial, and another card would be he put on a jacket. You could say hang on to a rope for dear life, or you could say hang on to your family. Right? You could say hang on in so many different ways. But if you memorize them in this way, that's going to keep you from saying hang on to the car, because that would not be appropriate. Get into the car would be appropriate,
but get into a movie
would not be. Or get into a bus, we would understand what you mean, but that's not what we say. We say get onto the bus or get on the bus. So these are really important things that just helping you with not only saying it right and using acceptable grammar, but to also understand the nuances, because there is a great story that goes along with how a lot of prepositional and phrasal verbs come about.
If we have a word and we're trying to remember that word, it's really, really efficient if we memorize that word's story. So in Chinese, one of the most wonderful part about the Chinese language is that all the words have such a long, deep meaning. The idioms all of them have a story that goes with them. Each word is composed of smaller words, and they all have a story that goes with them. That makes actually Chinese words pretty easy to remember, even though a lot of foreigners get tripped up because of the characters. But in the same way, English words have a story that goes with them, and a lot of people don't talk about that. They want to focus on the number of words, not the comprehension of those words. But if you focus on the story that goes with them, you're more likely to remember them.
Another vocabulary learning strategy you can have, number 4, okay, is to take this English pattern, take this specific English pattern and write it on your cards. Okay, your subject, your linking verb, which we'll get to one day, and then subject complement. Okay, so a subject complement could be a noun, okay, it could be equal to the subject, or it is an adjective. It complements the subject, okay, it describes that subject. So if I said, Josh is a teacher, that is subject plus linking verb plus subject complement. Okay, Josh is a teacher. If we say Josh is handsome, also. Okay, this is a really, really great way for you to practice not only describing things, but also equating things and knowing the difference between noun and adjective and how that works. How you can describe things by attributing titles to them, how you can use linking words or linking verbs, and how you can get a hold of plural subjects with plural verbs or pronouns with plurals. Like subject-verb agreement is already difficult, but if you practice with these simple constructions, very simple, but proper, you're on a good stretch.
And thing number 5, that is the best strategy that we have learned to learn lots of vocabulary, to comprehend lots of vocabulary, is to engage all your senses. So as people, we have around 5 senses, and a lot of times we just use one of them. We just use our ears or maybe our eyes, but really if you can use other senses, it can make your language learning, your vocabulary learning so much better. So for example, if you're studying the word like fluffy, go get a pillow. And when you study the word fluffy, hold the pillow or pet the cat or something like that. If you're talking about spiky or scratchy, then you should find something that is that texture. Engage those senses, because your brain will put those two words, that feeling, that sense, and that word together for you.
With the motion too. You can do this with verbs like turn on the light. Get up and turn on the light. Turn around, go sit down. If you physically do this at the same time, you're giving your mind so many things to hang on to. You're giving it something to listen to. You're speaking at the same time. You're actually physically doing it. There's a lot of science that points to the support of motion, total physical response. You're moving as you do something. It helps your mind to remember things so much easier. That's why Simon Says is such a great game.
Right. And so with all that said, the reason why we do these things, the reason why we remember vocabulary is, again, not to pass the test, but is to communicate. One of the most frustrating things it can be as a language learner is to talk to a person and just not know what that person said. The words, you miss them out and they sound almost like white noise.
Or you've studied English for 10 or 12 years. You know hundreds of words. You've passed countless tests, yet you can't speak it. Or you can't say it in the right way, or you are a grammar genius in your own language and you know how grammar works and you can read and write perfectly, but you can't hold a normal conversation with somebody. Like, that is so frustrating.
And so at Why Wolf Friends English, our philosophy has always been better English together. And part of vocabulary learning is the same way, that we put things together and our English becomes better. So for you guys, we are going to have a lot more content, a lot more resources for you guys to sharpen your tools.
Some practice below with some of the ways that we've talked about today.
Right. And so if you guys practice those things, use more than just the things that you have learned to gain vocabulary. Branch out, try different things, and one of these days you'll be able to have a natural conversation with a native speaker.
Comfortably.
So keep learning, guys, and try out these vocabulary learning strategies that we talked about today, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.